For Mother's Day, let's talk about the Buddha's two mothers. Yes, I said that right. He actually had two mothers. So let's start in the beginning and why this is so important. So the Buddha's mother was Maya. So she had a vision one night where there was a white elephant with long tusks that entered her side. And from there, she was pregnant. And so what we're seeing with white elephants, they are very symbolic of bodhisattvas. So in Buddhist history, the soon-to-be Buddha was actually in a heavenly realm, and he decided upon when and where his rebirth was going to be. So he decided on that particular time that we now know in Buddhist history. So that was essentially him, if you will, coming down as a white elephant and entering Maya to be reborn into this world. So very symbolic in the Buddhist history. Now, Maya, as it was in that particular time, she wanted to have birth in her hometown. And so she traveled to that location. And as she was traveling, she was going to have birth. So she didn't actually make it. So she hung onto a branch and gave birth to Siddhartha, the man who would become the Buddha. Now, what was really important about what happened here was after she gave birth, a couple of days later on, she died. So childbirth is a very dangerous endeavor, very much in the past. So in our modern medical world, we have many life-saving treatments, but that wasn't so much the case in a lot of these ancient societies. So around 7 days after she gave birth, she died. So Siddhartha, even though just a baby, he's already experiencing dukkha, this impermanence, dependent origination, suffering, everything else happening to him as a little baby 7 days after he was born. So really we can think he was also spurred on, even though he's just a baby, spurred on to the spiritual path at that particular time, because it was decided back when Maya was pregnant that her future son was either going to be a great ruler or a great holy person, a monastic. And so obviously his father wanted him to follow in his footsteps and be that great ruler. And that's where we see the story with Siddhartha, where he was kind of kept inside a compound and shielded from the realities of everyday life that we see, all the impermanence and suffering and everything else. So that was a part of the story as well. Now, Maya's story doesn't actually end there. So she, due to her karmic actions, rebirth inside a heavenly realm. So there's different realms of rebirth inside Buddhist cosmology. And so there's also heavenly realms. And we see in Buddhist history that the Buddha would talk to different supernatural beings, as we might call them. So yes, he would actually teach gods, right? And so Maya, now reborn inside a heavenly realm, was actually taught by the Buddha. And she was also there, according to Buddhist history, at the Buddha Siddhartha's parinirvana, or final nirvana. So her story didn't end with her passing away 7 days after giving birth to Siddhartha. She was very much a part of his story, although we may not always realize that with Maya. So without Maya accepting that bodhisattva and giving birth to Siddhartha, the man who had become the Buddha, we wouldn't have the Buddhism that we have today. We may not even have the teachings today. So there's a Buddha of an era. And so we could still be in an era where there is no Buddha and we don't have these teachings. So very much, she gave birth to Buddhism, the Buddhist religion, if we want to think about it that way, because without giving birth to Siddhartha in the right conditions at the right time to give the formation and the rise to the Buddha of our era, Shakyamuni Buddha, we would not have Buddhism. So we owe a lot to Maya and her love and everything towards Siddhartha. Now, that's a very tragic event that happened. So obviously Maya died, and we have Siddhartha there without a mother. Now his father married his aunt, and so his aunt, Gotami, was going to be his stepmother. And so we see where she really took on the role of mother. And so that is his second mother right there, and raised him right. Of course, he's been shielded by his father from the realities of the world. And we obviously know the Buddhist story in that regard, where eventually he did realize the what we call the foresights. And so he saw what actually happened, and that spurred his path. But she helped him as much as we could, and she showed love and compassion and everything else towards Siddhartha, which I think is very foundational for especially how Siddhartha became a monastic and eventually the Buddha. I think that was a very crucial part of it as well. But we see that after the Buddha's father dies, Gautami, no longer married, right? She can now pursue a spiritual path. And so very much in that time, in the region where ancient India was, women were not really seen to be monastics or have that type of freedom or liberty to do that. So what she does, she goes to Ananda, the Buddha's like favorite, assistant to him. And she's asking, can I be a nun? Can I be a monastic? And there's no nuns right now. It's just a purely monk-driven monastic level with the Buddha. It's all males. So she would be the first. And basically the Buddha is going, no. And this is a very foundational and pivotal portion of Buddhism as well, an important part of our history, because the Buddha is not necessarily saying no because he doesn't want her to become a nun or a monastic, but he's trying to really factor in a lot of political and social and cultural different things at a time. It's a very fragile. He's starting a brand new religion, basically, right? So his goal wasn't to start a religion, but that's what he's doing as a Buddha. He's teaching others. So he started his monastic community, which was very challenging in the beginning. Now it's spreading. But now we're seeing where we have the suffering of women as well. How can we do that? And so the Buddha has done many different sermons, and all sentient beings, doesn't matter if you're male, female, animal, God, whatever, they are all able to realize enlightenment and thus realize their true natural state of nirvana. So this is where, with her persistent asking to become monastic with Ananda is going back to the Buddha, and so eventually Ananda is going like, didn't you say that all beings can essentially be enlightened and realize nirvana? And it comes to the point where through Ananda's persistence that the Buddha relents. And this is a good thing, because he writes, this is absolutely correct. Thankfully for Ananda to keep doing this, we're going to do that. So she becomes the first female monastic nun in Buddhist history. And this is very pivotal because it sets that path for the nuns we have today inside Buddhism. So without her persistence, we may not have had a male and female monastic communities out there. We would have probably just had a male-dominated monastic community. So we have Maya, who gives birth to Siddhartha, the man who became the Buddha, without which we would not have Buddhism. And Gautami, without her, we would not have female monastics. So these two pivotal women are doing major things with Buddhism, our religion, and also with the Buddha. So without both of them helping to shape Siddhartha, the Buddha, giving birth to him, compassion, loving kindness to him, and prompting him to do things such as accepting female monastics, nuns, we would not have this Buddhism we have today. And going back to Gautami and nuns and female monastics, we look at that like, well, that's going to be a very hard life, because just like male monastics, you're giving up the home life, right? You're no longer in a home, you're going to be homeless. That's really what monastics are. They don't have all these possessions and everything else anymore. They don't have that householder life and everyday life that we are so used to, all the clinging and craving right there, because they're on that spiritual path. And so what we see as the religion progresses on, we see the writings of female monastics that this is like liberation for them. Not liberation to the point of nirvana yet, but just the freedom from the suffering and the struggles and the hardship they have of being females inside those particular societies was so restrictive that when they went to become monastics, and this is the amazing part, when they became monastics, where they're giving up everything, all their possessions and the world that they're used to, that is freedom, liberation, and it's joyful to them. So this path that the Buddha started with female monastics, thanks to his aunt, who was his stepmother, so his second mother, helped really liberate so many other people of both male and female. And so this was a key portion inside Buddhism. So when we look at Mother's Day, I look at it also on the Buddhist context, that we had Maya, who gave us the Buddha, for which we would not have this religion, and Gautami, for which we would not have probably also the Buddha, because like her love and kindness and support and everything else in raising him. If he was not raised correctly, that could have also hindered his progress. But she was also instrumental in ensuring that we have a female monastic order, the nuns. And this was key because they provide a rich and wonderful portion of the Buddhist religion. And so take this on Mother's Day, that we can also give thanks and love to these two very important mothers to the Buddha. Thank you.